let's talk about the sign of peace. You know that point in the Mass where you shake hands and say, "Peace be with you." Or maybe you don't shake hands, maybe you do something else. Because let me tell you, I've seen it all when it comes to the sign of peace. I've seen the fist pump sign of peace. There you go, bro. I've seen the awkward yet versatile two-finger peace. You can reach anyone in the church with that one. And with that, I've seen the slingshot sign of peace. I hope you caught it. Then there's the bow of peace, the hug of peace, the kiss of peace. I've even seen the smooch of peace. The smooch is just a little longer than the kiss. I've been there when the sign of peace has become Merry Christmas or congratulations at a wedding. I've seen priests encourage the faithful to cross the aisles to shake hands during the sign of peace. I've seen a lot, and perhaps you have too, which is why part of me wonders if we're confused about it. Do we know what it means and why it's there? I'm not the only one who has wondered that. The bishops of the church have wondered too. In 2005, at a synod of bishops, a proposal was set forth to study the sign of peace and even consider moving it from its place before communion to right before the offertory. A commission was set up to study the subject. And some 9 years later, it was a long study, 9 years later in 2014, they released their findings. In the end, it was decided to keep the sign of peace where it is, but that priests should give instruction on it as to avoid misunderstandings or abuses. It's 2026, I might be 12 years late, but today and next week, I'd love to give some catechesis on it. Today, I'd like to focus on its history. Next weekend, we'll focus on the theology and its practice. The sign of peace is, in fact, a very ancient part of the Mass, one that has been consistently there from one generation to the next. It has an unbroken line of tradition. But it has taken on different forms throughout the centuries. In the early church, it was found in two different places. As early as the 2nd century, we know that the sign of peace was found before the offertory. Later on in North Africa and in Rome, it took place right before communion. And so in the early church, depending on the region where you found yourself, we had different practices concerning it. And we must remember that's still true today. Most Eastern Catholics, most of the Byzantine Catholics, have the sign of peace right before the offertory. In the Roman Rite, our rite, the sign of peace eventually found its place right before communion. But in the past, it looked much different than it does today. In the past, it began with the priest kissing the altar right beside the consecrated host. Sometimes he would even kiss the consecrated host itself, receiving the peace of Christ from the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. He would then pass that off to the deacon or assistant clergy. Then the assistant clergy would walk down to the congregation and begin to share it with them. Then each subsequent person who received the peace would then share it with the other. Kind of like we do at the Easter Vigil with the Easter candle and the light. It's passed from one person to the next. And that's how it was done in the early church. It's important to remember that the peace originated from the altar, from Jesus present there. The peace was shared in the congregation through a stylized kiss or embrace on the cheek. Kissing was a formal greeting amongst peers in the ancient world. This worked when men and women were segregated different parts of the church, which was custom in the ancient world. But in some regions, they started mixing. And so the embrace or kiss of peace was not seen as appropriate. By the 11th century, the peace shared amongst the congregation then started to disappear. What developed in some places was a pax board or a peace board. It sat on the altar. The priest would kiss it. It was passed to the congregation, and each congregational member took turns kissing the board. That too fell out of use. It might have been seen as not proper hygiene. But by the 13th century, what we see is this. The priest received the peace of Christ by kissing the altar, then just shared it with the assisting clergy in the sanctuary. There was no sharing of the peace in the congregation. And this is how it was all the way till 1969, when the sharing of peace was once again introduced into the congregation, this time with everyone sharing the peace at the same time. That's a short history. Next week, we'll dive into the theology and practice. To end, I will just say this, and thanks for staying with me. The sign of peace has many layers of meaning, like many liturgical actions. But where the sign of peace is during the Mass determines its primary meaning. When the sign of peace is before the offertory, like in many of our Eastern liturgies, its primary meaning is reconciliation from Matthew chapter 5. If you have something against your brother or sister, before you bring your gift, first go make peace with your brother or sister. And so it takes on a reconciliation tone. But when the sign of peace is before communion, like ours is, we can say that the primary significance is different. Here, above all, the sign of peace represents the presence, the peace of Christ, even the blessing of Christ, being extended from the altar to the community. And that's what we see in the history. This then should inform our practice today. This means a sign of peace is not a hello. It's not a how you doing. It's not even an expression of affection between significant others. It's primarily the reception of the peace, the blessing of Christ upon us from Jesus on the altar. And so when the priest extends that to you today, I hope you'll receive it. God bless you. God love you. Amen.